There was a guy named Takadu, a poor soul, sick with a serious illness with no hope of survival. He had no friends who asked about him, and his family were only waiting for the insurance money that would come to them when he died. So, no one came to visit him in his hospital room. Even the man entertained himself with the game he loved, Eternal Nations, a civilization building game. He played it all day, because he truly had nothing else to do. One day, Takadu lost consciousness due to his illness. When he woke up and opened his eyes, he found himself sitting on a stone throne in the middle of a forest. He looked around, not understanding what was happening, until he saw a woman emerging from between the trees calling out, "My lord! The king!" This was his favorite character from the game. Takadu was very happy to see her in reality, but at the same time, he didn't know how to act. Fortunately, Ava knew that she was part of a game and knew Takadu very well because she had lived with him through every round he played. She knew him better than anyone, even his family. Both of them were happy that they had finally met for real. Takadu asked if she was the one who brought him here, but she also didn't know what was happening. She told him that she suddenly found herself in the middle of this forest, but she was sure it wasn't her world. If she had to guess, she would say this world resembled the Eternal Nations game, but they weren't sure yet. Anyway, Ava saw this as a great opportunity and said to Takadu, "Since we're here, let's start from the beginning and build a kingdom like we used to." Takadu liked the idea and agreed that they should work together. The two of them performed the game's introduction sequence, but this time there was some embarrassment because they were standing next to each other in real life. The first thing they had to do was figure out exactly where they were. Ava used magic to summon a scout. When he saw the scout up close, he was disgusted by its appearance. It was very filthy, but there was nothing he could do because their faction, the Minera, commanded shadows and evil, so the scout had to look like that. His plan at the beginning of the game was to avoid drawing attention so they wouldn't get into any trouble, at least until they could defend themselves. So, he ordered the scout to go patrol the area and report back with any important information. At first, the scout just stood there staring at him, but Ava reminded it that Takadu was its leader. So the scout took its tail in its teeth and ran off to carry out its orders. Takadu was a little worried that he might not know how to control his powers in this world, but it appeared that everything was exactly like in the game. For example, he could see what the scout saw, so he would soon know where they were. "We're done with that. Now let's think about the next step," he said. Takadu had 200 mana points and used 100 of them to summon the scout, so he had 100 mana points left. He wanted to build a settlement to serve as a base for their operations, which would cost him 20 mana points. But after that, he would have very little mana left. He wished he could create a warrior to protect them if they were attacked, but that wasn't feasible right now. Ava reassured Takadu and told him not to worry, that she would fight for him. But frankly, her words were pointless because while a hero unit means she would grow stronger over time, right now her strength was like that of any ordinary human, so she wouldn't be able to help him much. The scout was still running through the forest by his will, and Takadu was getting an idea of the area's layout. But he was a little surprised because, even though the whole area was a forest, he hadn't seen any animals or monsters so far. Ava said that the animals were probably hiding because the forest was full of hiding places. But Takadu now realized that if they didn't find animals soon, they would have to spend mana to get food. She apologized to Takadu because she felt she wasn't helping much, but he told her, "Don't worry, just you being by my side is enough to give me energy." Her heart fluttered with immense joy when he said that. She told him she was grateful for his sweet words, but Takadu wasn't used to her being a real human girl who expressed her feelings so normally. Suddenly, the scout found something strange and signaled to Takadu to show him. A settlement of dark elves in the middle of the forest. The place wasn't far from Takadu's location, and it looked like a bunch of elves gathered together. Ava was somewhat relieved when she found out they were just dark elves, as they were usually neutrally evil, meaning they wouldn't necessarily be enemies of the Minera kingdom. But Takadu saw this as a disaster because he didn't want any civilization so close to him like this. His plan was to stay hidden for as long as possible to avoid war, but with the dark elves this close, that was impossible. Ava suggested they leave this place and go somewhere else. Takadu agreed with her because they hadn't built anything yet anyway, but before they left, he wanted to observe the dark elves a little more, explore the area, and see if there was anything useful nearby. Suddenly, Ava felt someone nearby. They looked around and found a group of elves emerging from the forest. The elves looked just as surprised as they were because they didn't know there were other people in this forest. They said their people had expelled them from their homeland and they had nowhere to go, so they were forced to enter this cursed forest. The journey had been very hard on their small children, and like this, they wouldn't be able to endure it for long. A small group of elves had gone out to look for food, and their leader, Gio, was sure they had to find something to eat here because the forest was full of greenery. But one of them, named Emile, was very worried because she had heard a rumor about a dangerous forest on the edge of Idoria, where an ancient evil was sealed, and she was afraid they might trespass on it. The leader reassured her, saying those rumors were myths because if there really was an ancient evil in this forest, the trees wouldn't be in such good condition. But even he himself felt that this forest frightened him for no apparent reason. When Geo, the leader of the elves, looked at Takadu, his heart ached with terror because he saw before him the embodiment of pure evil and malicious intentions. The man himself wanted to run away and flee, but he was afraid that any rash move could endanger him and his people. So, he walked calmly towards Takadu's throne, placed his head on the ground in respect, and introduced himself as the greatest warrior of the Mazarim tribe of the Dark Elves, apologizing for entering the forest without his permission. Ava didn't understand why the elves were being so respectful, but she decided to go along with the situation and asked them why they had entered Takadu's land without permission. Geo began to tell how his tribe used to live in the middle market and were peaceful people, but Ava cut him off and told him to finish his life story quickly. Geo apologized and explained briefly that his tribe had been persecuted and driven from their land, so they were forced to flee to this forest. He didn't understand why people who had always tried to live in peace were attacked and killed because of prejudice against their race. Takadu looked at Geo and noticed that he was very weak and tired. Geo explained that they had barely managed to escape when their village was destroyed, so they didn't have time to gather food. Ever since then, they had been running without stopping, so they hadn't had time to look for food. He and his men had gone out alone to find something for them to eat. It had been 5 days since they had eaten anything, and they still hadn't found any plants or animals to eat. Takadu felt sorry for them and decided to help them a bit. He used some of his mana to create a few apples for them. Geo was astonished when he saw the apples rolling on the ground because he had never seen anything like it before, and he hesitated to eat, not wanting to be rude in front of someone like Takadu. But Emil and the others were very hungry, so they didn't care and started eating, feeling it was the most delicious thing they had tasted in a long time. Takadu made them a few more apples to fill them up. Geo was still shocked by Takadu's generosity and didn't know how to act. Ava got annoyed with him and told him it was rude not to accept the gift Takadu had given them so generously. But Geo wasn't hesitant because he was suspicious of the food. He placed his head on the ground again and said he greatly appreciated Takadu's kindness. But in the camp, the children of the elf tribe were very weak from lack of food. If they didn't eat something soon, they would die. So he asked Takadu's permission to take this food to his tribe so the children could eat. Takadu felt sorry for the suffering children again, so he decided to do his duty. He increased the amount and created a pile of different food for Geo to take with him. But Ava did not agree with this idea because this move would cost a lot of mana. The whole clan couldn't believe their eyes when they saw that huge amount of food, and they were even more surprised when Ava told them, "Take all of this, consider it your property." The Dark Elves had been oppressed for years and forced to live in darkness, so no one had ever lent them a helping hand like this. They all thanked him from the bottom of their hearts and began carrying the food back to the camp. Back at the camp, all the elves were on the verge of dying from hunger, but a few still had hope that Geo and the others would return with food. Suddenly, everyone smelled a very delicious smell of food. They looked around and found Geo and the others carrying a huge pile of food on their backs. Everyone was relieved that they wouldn't stay hungry again and began to praise Geo for bringing all this food. When they asked him where he got it from, he said, "We got lucky and found it on the way," and didn't elaborate. That night, Geo was sitting looking at the fire, lost in thought, when suddenly the tribe's chieftain, Moltrar, said to him, "You did a great job today, Geo. The fruits you brought are simple." But he noticed that Geo wasn't very happy, so he asked him what was wrong. After a brief silence, Geo told him that he had met a mythical being in the forest and didn't know how to feel about him. Moltrar asked him, "What myth are you talking about?" Geo told him that Emil had said something to him about a being sealed in this cursed forest. Moltrar knew that legend and was surprised that Geo had actually met the King of Destruction, Damar. He explained to him that the legend says, when the world becomes too prosperous, the King of Destruction will descend to Earth and destroy everything, making all civilizations start from scratch. Frankly, Moltrar wasn't sure if this legend was true, but he was inclined to believe it. He asked Geo if the being he saw said he was the King of Destruction. Geo said he didn't remember him saying that, but based on his terrifying appearance, a name like King of Destruction suited him very well. Moltrar asked Geo if he spoke to the King of Destruction. Geo said it wasn't a conversation in the literal sense. The King of Destruction didn't talk much, but there was a woman with him who spoke on his behalf. From what Geo said, Moltrar was sure this being did not have good intentions. He asked him if he was forced to do something, like sell his soul for the food. Geo said the King of Destruction didn't ask for anything in return. The man was surprised and said, "How can an evil being give something like that for free?" Geo himself didn't know why the King of Destruction did that, but if he had to guess, he said it was mercy or pity from His Majesty. Moltrar was shocked that Geo called the King of Destruction His Majesty, as that title is only used for those who deserve great respect. But Geo saw nothing wrong with saying that because he was the one who helped them, so Takadu deserved respect. Moltrar couldn't believe Geo was defending the King of Destruction and asked him, "What did he say? Are you bewitched or something?" But he told him that the only reason they still had the energy to argue like this was because of the food the King of Destruction gave them. Besides, Geo couldn't have refused the food while they were that hungry. I mean, Exactly. What did you want Geo to say? Molchar realized he had no right to judge Geo's decision to trust the King of Destruction, because it was the best thing he could have done in that situation. But as the tribe's chieftain, it was his duty to ensure everyone's safety. So he said that from now on, he would be the one to deal with the King of Destruction in any negotiations. He had lived for over 200 years, so he was sure he could communicate with him. In Takadu's camp, Ava was annoyed with him for spending the rest of his mana on charity without thinking. She asked him why he did that. Takadu replied that he felt for the children dying of hunger and didn't want to leave them like that. Ava understood his point of view, but said, "We are just at the beginning of the road. We haven't even built our kingdom's children yet. We can't spend our resources like this." And she was right. Takadu apologized for not consulting her before spending the mana and promised to make it up to her. But something else was bothering her a bit. When the elves came, Geo couldn't talk to them properly because he was so nervous. Ava was surprised because she thought he was playing the role of a lofty, aloof being on purpose, but in truth, he was just a shy person who didn't know how to talk to people. Suddenly, the scout returned and told Takadu that the elves were coming back to the area. Takadu and Ava were surprised that the elves were returning, but Takadu remembered that last time he had given them more food than they could carry, so he thought they were just coming back to take the rest. The presence of different civilizations this close was sure to cause problems one day. Takadu wished the elves would take the food and leave the forest quickly, but that meant he would have to talk to them, and that was something Takadu wasn't capable of. But Ava saw that Takadu was upset and gave him an idea. "Let me negotiate on your behalf. That way, you'll seem like a mysterious and respected king, not like a shy teenager." Takadu liked the idea, but asked her if it was really okay if he let her speak for him. "No problem, boss. She's happy to help you, so there's no problem with her being your voice." After a while, Molchar and Geo arrived and knelt down before Takadu. Molchar introduced himself as the chieftain of the Dark Elf tribe and told him that he wanted to thank him from the bottom of his heart for the food he gave them when they desperately needed it. He asked for his name so he could thank him properly. After Ava looked at Takadu for confirmation, she announced that before them stood the King of Destruction, Takora. Geo was shocked to learn that Takadu was indeed the legendary King of Destruction, but they couldn't be rude to him. Molchar thanked Takadu again for his generosity. Takadu was relieved that the negotiation was going well so far, and since there was no dispute with the elves, Ava told them to take the food and leave. Geo and Molchar were surprised because they had expected to have to pay a high price for the help from the King of Destruction. They asked emphatically if they could really leave like that without giving anything in return, especially since they already had nothing valuable to give him. Molchar didn't want to remain indebted because, with someone like the King of Destruction, the debt could cost them their lives, but of course he didn't say that out loud. She looked at Takadu for help, and he told her to ask them for information about the world outside the forest. When she said that, Molchar said he would do that with great pleasure, but she told him that once he finished telling the information, he and his people must leave the forest immediately. But that meant the elves would have to wander again without a home to go to. Molchar asked Takadu to allow them to stay in the forest, but Ava refused immediately and told him that if he valued his life, he shouldn't tell anyone about Takadu's existence. Geo was about to open his mouth to object, because the Dark Elf tribe wouldn't be able to survive if they had to leave the forest, but Molchar stopped him because they couldn't risk upsetting Takadu. The two of them got up and started to leave. As they were walking away, Takadu thought to himself, "Is this right? I don't want the elves to suffer." Suddenly, a great idea came to him. He called out to Molchar and Geo and asked them, "Why don't you come become citizens under me?" The two were shocked by this offer and didn't know how to respond. Even Ava herself couldn't believe it. She said to him, "Come here for a second," and asked him, "Why did you say that?" Takadu explained to her that he was thinking of incorporating the Dark Elves using the vassal system from the upcoming game. When he mentioned this system, Ava realized the idea wasn't bad. The Dark Elves weren't good or evil by nature, meaning they wouldn't have major problems with the Minara kingdom, which was also inclined towards evil. Moreover, in the game, the Minara's basic citizens were the homunculi, and those guys looked really filthy, my friend. So, Ava asked, "You want us to live in a kingdom full of those creatures?" But Ava was convinced by the idea, so she went and told Molchar and Geo that if they agreed to become citizens of Minara, they would be under their protection. Molchar asked what that meant exactly if they joined. Ava told him frankly that from the moment they joined Minara, they would become evil, and the decision was theirs to join or not. But she reassured them that if they joined, it would be fun at least. After a while, Takadu and Ava went to the elf camp because they had finally decided. Ava was a little upset that they took so long to decide, but Takadu had expected this, especially after Ava told them they would become evil if they joined Minara. They arrived at the camp, and as soon as they entered, Moltrar announced to everyone that their new king had arrived. Everyone knelt down and cleared the path for Takadu as he went towards the throne they had made for him. Some of the elves were very afraid when they saw Takadu for the first time, and others were happy, but those who got too close to him fainted from the overwhelming dark energy emanating from him. Geo warned everyone not to look directly at Takadu so they wouldn't be considered rude, but Takadu wasn't interested in that at all. When Takadu sat on the throne and all the dark elves gathered, he officially announced that everyone here would from today be citizens of Minera. That's it. From here, everyone is now a citizen under me, Takadu. But Geo, frankly, was expecting something bigger, especially since Ava had told them they would become evil. Suddenly, Geo felt a terrible amount of hatred entering his body as he remembered all the injustice he and his people had suffered. The same feeling happened to every member of the tribe, and after thinking about all the persecution they had endured, they felt relieved and happy that they had found someone like Takadu to protect them. After a few days in the new kingdom of Minara, things were going very well for Takadu. He was looking at the map Moltrar had given him and got very angry because this was the worst starting location he had ever had in the game. Ava asked him what was wrong. He showed her the map and explained that to the north of this forest was the holy kingdom of Kulya and the kingdom of Alina, which was full of high elves. Those two were strongly inclined towards good, meaning if they found out about the existence of an evil Minara kingdom, they would destroy them. They wouldn't be able to face two kingdoms like that in a direct battle. Furthermore, this cursed forest had no resources to extract, but fortunately, they now had the Dark Elves, meaning they had a good number of people to help with the kingdom's strength. Ava was happy to hear they were coming, and that they might bring important information. After a while, Moltrar and Geo arrived with Emil. Geo said that Emil was very smart and well-versed in legends and foreign affairs. Geo was sure Emil would be a great help in Takadu's plans. Takadu was happy they brought extra help, but he saw they were very nervous around him. So he told Ava to tell them they didn't have to be so formal with him. Let's get to the important matter, he said. Ava told them that Takadu had made some decisions regarding the management of Minera. From today, Moltrar and Geo would hold important positions. Moltrar would take over managing the kingdom's affairs, and Ava, having heard he knew how to use magic, expected great work from him. As for Geo, he would become the commander of the warriors for the entire Minera army and would have full authority over the troops. Geo said he was proud of the position and promised he would slaughter anyone who stood in Takadu's way without a second thought. Takadu saw the seriousness in Geo's eyes as he said this and told Ava to tell everyone that he preferred peace, meaning they should avoid conflicts unless forced. Geo couldn't believe the King of Destruction loved peace, but oh well, no problem. Ava told everyone to rest now because they would soon start building houses in the forest. She asked Takadu if they could start gathering building materials now. Takadu said there was no problem, but he wanted them to gather materials without destroying the forest. Ava liked the idea and asked Moltrar if that was possible. He told her they could build most of their houses inside large, hollowed-out trees. Takadu was delighted with the idea and told everyone to start working quickly, but then he remembered that they had to do reforestation. The three of them were a bit confused because they didn't understand what Takadu meant by reforestation. Takadu was surprised they didn't know what reforestation meant, as he had heard that people in this world should have unlocked the tree of advanced architectural technology. He asked them if they had knowledge of military magic or the 6 great elements, but Moltrar said he had only heard of 4 great elements. As for military magic, Emil suspected that no one from the other nations knew anything about it. Takadu and Ava discovered that the people in this world were far more backward than they had imagined. The magic of the Dark Elves was much weaker than he had imagined, but if the rest of the world was like them, Takadu saw that they could catch up very soon. Now, Ava explained to them what reforestation meant, planting a new tree for every tree they cut down to preserve the forest. But usually, trees take decades to grow on their own. In this case, reforestation relied on a magic technique that used specific magical elements to accelerate the tree's growth. She told them that this was a technique that Takadu himself had invented, but this was a big lie because Takadu hadn't invented anything, but it would be embarrassing if he told the truth. Emil was utterly amazed and excited that Takadu had such knowledge. She asked him if he was the one who made the apples and grapes he gave them. Ava told him that she had planted a grape seed, and it had actually started to sprout. She couldn't wait to see how big it would grow. Takadu fell silent, and suddenly, when Emil mentioned that she had planted a grape seed, because that idea hadn't even occurred to them. Fruits like grapes and apples didn't exist in this world. Yet, Takadu was able to create them with his production skill. If his hypothesis was correct, then this skill wouldn't be limited to just food. Takadu decided to test it and created a metal ingot. As expected, the skill worked perfectly. With this new discovery, as long as he had mana, he could create anything, from gunpowder to basic metals and even petroleum. Conquering the whole world might not be as difficult as he had thought. In the end, we see a large palace in a clean place. Inside, a woman is talking to a cardinal, telling him that the end of the world will come from the cursed lands in the Dark Continent. He informs her that they must prepare because monsters have appeared from the northern province. She says to him, "Let's go. It seems the world is going to change from now on." And so this part ends, my friend. I wonder what will happen in the new part. Wait for it soon, God willing. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And most importantly, send prayers upon the prophet. See you later, my friend.